Beth anymore, but what are we going to do with the next week, 2 weeks, as we try to figure out what our new lives are going to look like? Because you're paralyzed. No, that's not what it was either. Does he have any broken bones at all? Has he had any surgeries? I mean, that wreck was so vicious. I thought he had to have, at the very least, broken arm, broken shoulder, broken ribs, broken leg, pierced lung. I don't know. Massive concussion, maybe a traumatic brain injury. Thankfully, he had none of those things, because on Wednesday, the next picture we get is of him standing with the medical team and his girls. And then there's a video of him walking out, which I'm going to be serious. As a father, it brought a tear to my eye of joy for Ryan Newman and his family. I just don't understand, Justin, why in this day and age we were held hostage of, is he dead? Is he paralyzed? Nope. He's walking out just fine.
NASCAR just has to do a better job, period. Hopefully this is not something that they have to deal with, but they've had this happen enough when you start to go back through the list of drivers that have been injured or killed on the racetrack or around the racetrack, even in the instance of Davey Allison, where it's a helicopter crash. They've dealt with this stuff enough where now they know when they're going to play on social media and be such a digital company and a digital sport that they've got all these fans that are watching and invested. They've got to do a better job of getting the information out there, because in today's age, no news at all normally means something bad has happened, because you don't want to get it out there. At this point, why wouldn't you want to celebrate the fact and even celebrate the safety of your cars to be able to say, yes, this driver survived this type of incident? Even coming out, Eric, off the Fox broadcast. Now, maybe Ryan Newman wasn't conscious when they took him out of the car, but if he was, you could see by Jeff Gordon's look and even the way Mike Joy handled it, the guy who was the play-by-play when Dale Sr. passed away in Fox's first race.
That's why I thought he was dead, Justin, because of the way.
I mean, we
Jeff
both
Gordon,
at the same time, my brother and you and I all text each other almost the same time of like, Gordon doesn't look good. His eyes were welling up. You could tell he was upset. They weren't showing many replays of it. They weren't showing the car. It was all super wide shots. You could even tell when Denny got to victory lane that they knew that something was up at that point, because they were much more subdued. And again, the whole outrage about Denny doing a burnout on the front stretch. Denny Hamlin doesn't know at that point Ryan Newman is stuck in the race car.
No.
The fans didn't even know, Eric, for up to 2.5 hours after the race what his condition was. How are you going to blame a guy that just won the biggest race of the year, who's come around? This all is behind him. He's come all the way around a 2.5 mile track. Now he's down the front stretch, hundreds of feet away from where Ryan Newman's car is, and all they see is lights. And to his point, this happens after every Daytona 500. There's some kind of a wreck. You just assume the driver's going to get out of the car. And he did a donut. And then he said once they had called off the interview at Victory Lane, he started to realize maybe something was up. At that point, he doesn't have his helmet on. He can't communicate with his spotter. His team's run out. They've run from pit road. They don't know what's going on.
It was the game in 2001.
And they immediately apologize. They're much more subdued. Everybody, Eric, just wants to get outraged over everything now.
Yeah. Yep.
And social media just gives them an opportunity to voice their opinion. And most people look like complete jackasses when they do it. Darren Ravel, one of the first people. Oh, can we not celebrate this till we know he's okay? All right. Why don't you go to a race and try to understand how the track is set up? That this isn't Bristol. Ryan Newman's car is not upside down on the front stretch where Denny's like, oh, okay, maybe something's not right here. It's all the way down. It's surrounded by lights. This just happened to even Austin Dillon's car. And that thing was shredded and he got out of it. And most people didn't know what was going on. So that whole notion of just getting outraged, as soon as they realized what was going on, Eric, they were much more subdued in that process. But that's our culture, is just get outraged over everything. And our point isn't getting outraged at NASCAR for the news. It's just understanding your position in the sport. Don't hold your fans hostage if at all possible. And obviously they knew this story. Look, if this comes out that Ryan Newman and his wife or his dad or somebody specifically didn't want this out there, I'll respect that a lot more than just NASCAR sort of holding this news back for whatever reason it is and not letting the fans know. If it was a family decision and true family decision that they didn't want this stuff out. But again, now that we've seen him walk out of the hospital, that doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't you want to let your fans, your competitors who are all friends, your family and friends that aren't at the racetrack, let them know the good news versus speculating that, oh my God, did we just see another driver pass away right in front of our eyes.
Yeah, I think that's the point. And I think that's what we're saying is you look at basketball, you look at football, you look at even when pop culture superstars, whether they're athletes, actors, singers, even when they have car accidents or accidents around their homes, we get news. Okay, Tracy Morgan was in a bad accident. He's in surgery. He's going to have some long recovery ahead. You knew that within hours of Tracy Morgan, a comedian's horrible accident when he was traveling and got hit by a Walmart truck. You knew pretty much within the hour of, like I said, Ryan Shazier's injuries, or if a basketball player like a Klay Thompson tears his ACL, but he's going for an MRI and he's going to have surgery. Look, I'm with you, Justin. I'm not saying we are owed anything. I'm not trying to be selfish here, but look at it from the standpoint of, and I think you said it well, tell us the things that you know that don't really break any rules. In other words, Ryan's in the hospital resting. He's not been rushed to surgery. He's got no broken bones, things like that. You could say that. I don't really think that breaks any rules. It doesn't tell us that he's surrounded by family, whether or not he's conscious or not. But the last news we had was he got rushed into trauma. And then we find out he has no broken bones and never had surgery. Like, that doesn't even make sense.
No, Eric. And how many times have we seen athletes go into hospitals or someone of any type of fame, and the hospital will actually set up a press conference and the doctor comes out and speaks about it? I mean, we know when guys go in and have ACL surgery, hey, it was a successful surgery. A full recovery is expected. They're not sitting there telling us like, well, you know, when this particular athlete was 8 years old, he fell down and he hurt his knee and he had to be on this medication for this. We don't need to know all that stuff, but we would like to know a little bit more of this guy is going to make a full recovery. He's not paralyzed. I mean, I don't feel like that's asking for too much. And knowing that if someone is either dead or alive 2.5 hours after a wreck, I don't think is asking for a lot to be able to know that information on a faster timeline. That's all we're saying.
Yeah. So back to Denny Hamlin. I'm with you. If you look at 2001, and I think a lot of NASCAR fans nowadays, because of the outrage culture, because of the fact that everything is here today and forgotten tomorrow, a lot of people don't realize that Michael Waltrip did burnouts and then had confetti and celebration in Victory Lane. He went from the best day of his life to the worst day of his life in a span of 5 minutes.
Yeah. So and he didn't know Eric till Ken Schrader came up to Victory Lane and whispered in his ear.
Exactly.
And that's when everything changed.
That's how it happened. And so is everyone now going to go back 19 years and say, well, now we need to be outraged that Michael Waltrip celebrated when the legend of the sport died and he was dying in turn 3 while Waltrip's celebrating on the front stretch. And that's the other thing people don't realize. And you pointed it out. Newman's car was over a quarter mile away from where Denny Hamlin was running in the grass and then had driven back around to the pits and then gone into Victory Lane. This is Daytona. This is a 2.5 mile racetrack. And if you've never been to Daytona, which I have, and I know Justin, you have, this is a humongous place. So it looks small on TV. It does not look like that when you're there. Ryan Newman's car was upside down at the end of the front stretch, almost into turn 1. It is literally a quarter a mile, maybe a little bit more away from where Denny Hamlin was. And like you said, it is not uncommon for huge wrecks to have happened at the end of a Daytona or Talladega. It happens freaking all the time. And so to Denny Hamlin's point, he's at that point taking his helmet off, his earpieces off. He doesn't have any communication further with the team. He's getting out of his car to pound on the roof and celebrate. He can't hear anything. All he's seeing is a car upside down that for 19 years people have gotten out of. So his reference point is that everything's fine until he's told otherwise. So I actually was sort of neutral or somewhat negative neutral on Denny Hamlin. I've actually become a little bit more of a Denny Hamlin fan after this weekend just because of all the bullshit he's had to put up with.
Couldn't say it any better. It is exactly what it is. Everybody expects things to happen the way that in a perfect world, everybody wants to play armchair quarterback. And again, if you haven't been to this racetrack, they were superimposing an NFL field just in the infield in front of the start-finish line. That's how big this racetrack is. And when you think of multiple NFL fields away from a car, and to your point, Denny Hamlin comes around the track, down pit road, gets the lug nut check, drives out through the grass to Victory Lane. He has no idea and cannot see what's going on with Ryan Newman. Just like us as fans didn't know what's going on. He didn't see the replay at that point. Hell, we hadn't even seen the replay as fans. They went to commercial break after that. We had no idea what had happened to Ryan Newman's car.
Yeah,
it wasn't until Fox came back from break and showed the LaJoie car hitting Newman's car, basically exposed in the air, flipping, hitting on the driver's side.
But
so
even then, once they showed that, Justin, they stopped showing it.
Right. They showed 2 replays, and that was it.
Because they knew something was wrong.
They knew something was wrong.
They didn't know anything more than Denny.
So NASCAR, just do better. Give us more information as fans. If you want fans to be invested, if you want them to spend hours every single weekend watching your sport, if you want to then throw these replays of this wreck online and you have that digitally imposed on all of your information, getting eyeballs in, just do a better job of getting the information out to the fans. That's all we're asking for. Eric, another topic I think that's going to create some outrage is some of this leaked information that's coming out of the possible new NFL CBA. This has been rumored now for a long time, but what the NFL owners want is more games, because more games equals more money. But as Biggie said, more money, more problems. And I think that's what the players are starting to look at now, of what's the long-term ramifications here and what are we getting back in this deal. So the proposal would be add a 17th regular season game, but also add 2 more playoff teams in each side. So we'd be up to 7 playoff teams in the AFC and the NFC. That basically equates to 2 more wild card games. So you'd have 3 wild card games on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. And again, the TV deals are coming up. The NFL is trying to monetize this situation as best as possible, Eric. So this is leaked. This hasn't been voted on yet, but this is what the new CBA, what they're working on. So it's 7 playoff teams, Eric. Is that just too much at this point? Or is this going to work similar to what baseball has hoped, that adding that extra wild card is going to keep more teams involved, keep more late season interest into these teams by adding that extra playoff berth?
For a sport like baseball, that's basically irrelevant for 162 games, I think it makes perfect sense, because you're adding an opportunity for some teams to get into the playoffs and make an exciting fall baseball run at basically the only time that most people watch baseball. And so I think for them, it makes sense. For football, I'm actually against it. I think the way they have the playoffs right now in football is fine. I like it. I think it makes the games matter through all 16 games. I think it makes the standings matter. And I think it breeds just a little bit of tension there. It's this culture again of, well, it's not fair. I think we went more in. We just want, and in the NFL's case, more equals, as you said, more money. More people are happy. More fan bases are happy. Everyone gets a trophy, yada, yada. I don't like it. I like the playoffs the way they are. I think they're fine. And I think it builds a lot of tension for those wild card spots. You start adding teams in these NFL playoffs, and yeah, you're going to get tension the same way in a lower part of the brackets for the standings. But then it's just falsified tension. It's just manufactured tension, because you're going to have 7 and 9 teams battling out for that last spot. And I just think that's dumb. I really think the football standings are fine the way they are, and the playoffs are fine the way they are. The 17th game, I'm going to kind of say the same thing. You're in a league where you're battling injuries all season long. You're already having trouble keeping, and you see it when playoff teams that are guaranteed a bye or a first round easier matchup will say, well, in week 17 or even week 16, we're not going to play some guys. We're going to give them rest. Well, what does adding a 17th game do? It just extends that period of time, especially if you're adding more teams to the playoffs, where the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season aren't going to matter, because there's just going to be more people resting. I don't think it's necessary. And I think in a game where you're already battling running backs, wearing out, wanting more money, not getting the overall value, now you're going to tell the running backs they have another game they've got to play. It just extends the whole problem that we're having with money and positional football, all the skill positions. I don't like it. I'm against it.
I don't have as much problem with the 7th playoff team as I do the 17 weeks, because I've been saying, I believe I've said it on the pod multiple times now, I don't understand why they don't just add another bye week for these teams and set the schedule up so that everyone that's playing on a Thursday night is coming off of a bye, and then make the season 18 weeks, but you only play 16 games. And then on the TV deal, you're giving another week of content that you can sell. What does it matter if it's 17 games? You're still only getting 18 weeks of football. The NFL will put 7, 8, 9, 10 games on at the 1 p.m. slot, and people can't even keep up with them. I have to have multiple TVs on with Red Zone channel, and it's still hard to keep up. They sometimes have so many 1 p.m. games on. So what's it matter if you only have 6 or 7 at that